Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Joe from GadgetryTech.com, and today I'm going to review the Dark Base 700 from a company called Be Quiet. It is a German brand. They are obsessed with quality and design and aesthetics, as you can tell, and that speaks in the case. So this case sells for $180 MSRP, so you'll probably find it right about that price or slightly less online. Included for the 180, of course, is the case with the LED lighting or RGB lighting up front. But you do get two 140mm Silent Wings 3 PWM fans. So on that real quick, I wish it came with 3 fans because for 180 bucks and for this case design it really needs 3 fans. Instead of having to go out and find your own additional one to match or buy a whole new set, because they are very high quality fans. I wish they just gave you that right off the bat. So that's the only nitpick I have with regards to what it comes with. Now, this is a decent sized case. It has 1.2mm rolled aluminum, so it's got some heft to it. It's very durable. It's not like it's a flexible case, and that's important because this case is very modular. It actually allows you to invert the motherboard in case you want the GPUs up top rather than down bottom. The power supply is always going to stay underneath. You can actually flip the entire motherboard tray on the opposite side, so if you want your window on the right side of the case instead of the left, you can do that as well. So modularity is huge with this case. Everything is customizable. With that being said, for what it comes with 3 3.5-inch hard drive bays. You can install up to 3 mechanical hard drives, 3.5-inch, or for what's included, 10 2.5-inch solid-state drives, which is a ton. If you include the motherboard tray, if you will, or behind the motherboard tray, you can actually install, it's 14 SSDs. So you won't even have that many SATA ports on the computer, so you'd have to make a couple additional purchases anyway, but it's there nonetheless. So we'll talk about the features up front. So up top you have a 4-way fan selector, and what that means is you have auto, 1, 2, and 3 for your speed levels. Now there's a dual channel fan controller built in, dual rail if you will, meaning that you can have 2 different power settings for the rail 1 versus rail 2. And what it comes with, it's silent versus performance mode. It's set to silence mode by default, and then performance mode naturally will let the fans spin up much higher. So to talk about numbers, so what I found, I ended up leaving this on performance mode, and here's why. Silent mode is great. Silent mode level 1 spins the fans at only about 460 RPMs. It's fairly slow. It's very, very quiet. So if you're just using web browsing, it's excellent because there's no noise. However, if you have a typical CPU cooler, depending on how much noise your CPU cooler makes, or power supply fan, that will be louder than the case fans. So even though the case fans aren't adding to it, you're still not dead silent. So you have to consider that. Step 2 on quiet mode will bring the fan speed up to about 810, 820 RPMs. And if you max it out to step 3 in quiet mode, you'll hit 1100 RPMs. If you put it in performance mode, step 1 is 890 RPMs. So it's just barely higher than step 2 on quiet mode. And it's still very quiet because those Silent Wings 3 PWM fans are very good at buffeting the airflow, so it's not a lot of turbulence or wind noise. Step 2 on performance mode will bring it to 1180. So if you're seeing a trend, basically in performance mode versus quiet, if you picture 1, 2, 3 for quiet and 1, 2, 3 for performance, here's the noise ceiling. There's a little bit of an overlap. 1 and 2 matches quiet mode 2 and 3. And then if you put it in performance mode step 3, it goes all the way up to 1600 RPMs, which is very loud. I'm going to do so. You can probably hear it, but I do have additional fans, so keep that in mind. So that's on step 3. So step 1 is fine again on quiet mode for web browsing. However, if you do ramp up your power consumption or load on the CPU, it is not adequate enough to keep the GPU and processor cool. So you may even find that step 3 on quiet mode might not always be enough if you're doing a lot of video rendering or things like that. So as you can tell, there is a slightly tinted glass. It's tempered glass. It's real glass. It's not acrylic or some plastic that's not going to hold up, which you'd expect for a $180 case. It is mounted with these rubber isolating rings, so when you put the glass on, it's not directly touching any metal. It's good for the glass, also helps with acoustics. There's sound deadening material on the front, top, and side of this case, so that absorbs some of the sound. The Dark Base 900, which is a larger and $200 case, it's an older version but more feature-packed version than this. has panels on this side that, because there's no glass, that has sound deadening there. So that one's a little bit quiet and performs a little bit better on airflow. So with that being said, there are a lot of awesome features I like about this case. You obviously have the LED control up front. There's RGB. So if I press the button to change lights, I can cycle through different modes. So what I'm doing right now, there's steady blue. If I press it again, it's a pulsating blue. Steady orange, pulsating orange. And you can go through 6 colors, and then at the very end, it'll cycle through all of them if you want it to. So I'll leave it on pulse mode. You can control an additional RGB LED strip. It does have, on the LED controller, you can plug an additional module in. So if you want the built-in RGB system to control everything else, you can do that. I added some fans. So the fans that I put in here are from Corsair. They have RGB LEDs built in and its own controller. I'm using that to power those fans so you can have a really quick mix and match. This is the Gigabyte Aorus Gaming 5. It's for the Ryzen chipset, which has its own built-in RGB controls, so you have a lot of flexibility there. I like how convenient this is, so if that one channel output that's built into the case is enough, it's very convenient just to cycle through. However, you only get 6 color choices. You're not going to get to bounce through the full spectrum of color. So a few interesting things. It's a very quiet case when you want it to be. However, because of these L-shaped vents at the top, they did that to help direct airflow, so it's not just flying through a mesh or a vent. It's good in in most cases, but when you run very extreme fan speeds and a lot of air gets pumped through the top lid, that can become an issue because it's now buffeting more, and it could backfire. But in most cases, it's pretty quiet. If you did liquid cooling, so you can do up to a 360 millimeter radiator on the front or the top. There are adjustable panels, so on the front here I can remove a plastic panel up front. That allows me to put a full 360 millimeter radiator going straight from top to bottom. On the top there is a removable tray. So what I like about that is it makes it very easy to install all your components on the motherboard. It's easy to add liquid cooling or even traditional 120 to 140 millimeter case fans. This does not support 240 millimeter, so you're limited to 120 to 140. But that tray that slides out makes it very easy to install things, also makes it easier for wire management. If you look at the bottom of the case inside, they're removable plastic covers. So on the motherboard, I can lift up these plastic covers and run an additional case fan or 2 to do even more airflow. If I have a lot of wires that I'm connecting and I just don't have enough as far as what's built in for cable management, I can pop those off to utilize it for that. This is well designed for a mid-ATX motherboard, a standard ATX motherboard. If you go an extended ATX or eATX, because of the length of the board, it will cover the rubber grommets on the case. However, the covers for the 5 or 3.5 inch hard drives are removable, and you can use those as wire management. Now, what's really cool about the wire covers, or the hard drive covers, is you don't have to just pop them off if you don't need them. You can pop them off enough to use them for wire management. So I think that's a really clever way of using one spot for 2 different things. And of course, as you can see, I have an additional hard drive installed on the included modular hard drive cage. You don't have to use that. You can get a very clean look. And if you do not have a hard drive cage here and you want to run a GPU straight across, you could put in a GPU that's up to 16.9 inches long, which is massive. If you do have the hard drive cage directly in front of where the GPU goes, you can do up to 11.2 inches long graphics card. So it's nice because this is modular. I can put hard drives above or below wherever my graphics card or 2 graphics cards are. So you're really not limited on space, and you can still have 4 to 5 mechanical hard drives, even with the biggest possible graphics card on the market. If we take the other side cover off, now you can see your fan controller, which also works as your LED controller mounted here. You have tons of wire management options, which is excellent because there's a lot of different ways you can configure this thing. So again, these ingenious anchor points for your zip ties, the placement of everything really helps, and it shows how much attention to detail they paid when designing this case. Again, this is not an inexpensive case by any means. It's $180, but when you look at the level of modularity the quality of the metal that they use, the rolled edges, there's no sharp edge you're going to cut yourself on. Everything is painted black. You can use a GPU riser and mount your graphics card the long way. Flip the motherboard around. Move the motherboard on the other side of the case. Put any size power supply you want. The biggest on the market will fit. Biggest graphics cards on the market will fit. It is a very well designed case. Now if I look at the front of the case, I pop this cover off, and what's nice about it is everything. So look at that. So the lights disable by themselves because there's a pressure sensitive contact on the front. So now I have access to the dust filters, and there's a dust filter for the top for the entire row of fans. And by taking just that one front cover off, I also have access to the bottom dust filter. So this is very easy to clean. I have an Australian Shepherd. She naturally sheds a lot, so I had to pop this off, and I was surprised how well these work. My computer is much cleaner than it's ever been. I've used cases from Roseville, Antec, a couple other brands, NZXT. I've had 3 cases from them. And this is the best filtration system I've used on a case yet. It's also the best looking because of the glass and the black aluminum. I mean, it is a gorgeous case. So again, a lot of attention to detail. Looking at the top cover, I mentioned the 3-speed fan controller. USB 3.1 Type-C. You have your headphone and microphone jacks, or microphone and headphone if you're going from left to right. Power cable, reset button, your LED RGB control button, if you will. It's a momentary press. It's like a little click on it, and that's all you do to press it or to change it. And then you have 2 USB 3.0 ports. So no USB 2.0, so make sure that if you're planning on using the front USBs that you have a fairly modern motherboard. The USB 3.1 Type-C connector also has a special connector on it, so most new mid to high-end motherboards will have everything you need, but this case might not work well if you have a very old motherboard and you're looking to upgrade. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so that about wraps up the review for this case, and as you can tell, I freaking love this case. For under 200 bucks, you get a ton of features. It's built extremely well. It looks really nice. You have a lot of flexibility with your configuration, so if there's one case that you're going to keep for 5+ years, this is a hell of an awesome case to get because this will adapt to whatever components you have. You can keep changing things out and make it fit what system components you pick out. So I love that about the case. The only 2 things I can ping on it or nitpick on it is I would prefer it to come with 3 fans instead of 2. Not the end of the world. I added my own RGB fans anyway, which looks amazing with the tinted glass. And the other one is because the whole thing is focused on being quiet. Airflow up front is actually excellent with this mesh. However, because of the L-shaped vent up top, I think if they put a second one in front of it, it would have been enough to make everything fairly quiet and still give more airflow. All of the air that a top mount radiator would suck out flows through one tiny vent on the back, which can get noisy at high RPMs. However, it does an excellent job at expelling heat. I've put my hand up there and it gets pretty warm. So those are the only 2 things. A little bit better ventilation design on the top to while still minimizing noise, and then the fan. However, everything else, when you look at what you're getting for the price, you still can't complain. It is an incredible value. You have all the latest connectors as far as USB-C and the 3.0 up front, as well as the tempered glass and RGB. So there's really not much more you can ask for. I hope this review helps you in making your decision. If you have any questions, shoot me a comment below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.